this land. It gives me life! Hello friendos, this is Chain, welcoming you back to Chain of Commander. For today's trip to our base of operations, we have looked at lands that can fill our graveyard, we have looked at lands to help their 1/1 counter decks. Today I figured we could look at lands that, maybe they help gain us a little bit of life. Things like Radiant Fountain, stuff like that, sure, they can enter the battlefield and they gain us a life one time, but there are just some lands out there that are an excellent, repeatable source of life gain. So I figured we could go over those. Now, if any of these seem like the kind of card you'd like to add to one of your decks, definitely make sure you use that TCG Player affiliate link below to acquire them. Won't cost you a single cent more, but it will help out the channel. And you know, that this list like this, it's not meant to be a comprehensive list. I'm only focusing on a few that I personally feel are pretty cool and worth playing, but there definitely might be others out there that I miss. If I miss any of your favorite life gaining lands, definitely make sure you put them in the comments below. That said, let's start off with the one card that actually inspired this list for me. Alright, the first card I want to talk about here today is actually the card that inspired me to do this list, Serif Sanctuary. Serif Sanctuary, when it enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. Whenever an angel enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life, and then you can tap it for colorless mana. I opened this thing in a chaos draft, to foil one of these things, in a chaos draft with my buds way back in the day, and that's kind of what got my brain thinking about what are some good life gain cards. Now this particular card, it did end up in one of my commander decks. It ended up in my Karametra Angels Tribal Soul Sister style deck here, and really that's ultimately a deck that it fits very, very, very nicely into. But it doesn't necessarily need to be a Soul Sisters build. Any Angel Tribal will definitely love the inclusion of this card. So if you're playing things like Lear Dawnbringer, or Shalai Voice of Plenty, or one of the Sigardas as kind of an Angel Tribal commander, this will easily slip right in and be able to produce incidental life over the course of the game. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be playing Angel Tribal. There's a couple other key cards out there that this plays incredibly nicely with. If you're playing an Enchantress deck with Sigil of the Empty Throne, that thing starts pumping out angels for you. You can get some incidental life gain off of that. If you're playing Luminarch Ascension in a Pillow Fort deck, that thing will start pumping out angels for you. You get some incidental life gain over the course of the game. Resplendent Angel, while he will likely be in a Angel Tribal deck, any white deck running Resplendent Angel, that thing just shoots angels across the board and just puts them out over and over again, and would represent so much incidental life gain off of Serif Sanctuary. But I can really only talk up this land so much. It only got me thinking about what's going on with this list, and there are plenty of other lands that do a lot better job. So let's get to those. The first one I want to talk about here is on this list, maybe not necessarily because of the amount of life it will gain you, but the fact that it does gain you life and has a little bit of extra utility as well. And that would be Inventor's Fair from Kaladesh. Inventor's Fair says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more artifacts, you gain 1 life. You can tap it to add a colorless mana to your mana pool, and it has an activated ability of 4, tap, sack it. You may search your library for an artifact card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library, and you can only activate this ability if you have 3 or more artifacts. In Commander, having 3 or more artifacts quite often happens on accident. Just through the nature of having your mana rocks out there, you can easily have 3 artifacts on the battlefield to start gaining that life and getting access to that tutored ability. But in the right decks that build themselves around artifacts, you are almost guaranteed to always have 3 artifacts out there. When I'm thinking decks like this, I'm thinking things like Jorah Weatherlight Captain, which I play this card in my Jorah deck, Urza, Psymaster Thopterist, Emery of the Loch. These are all artifact sector commanders that don't have a huge aggressive mana color requirement across the deck, so slotting in a utility land like this is very, very simple to do with very, very low risk. And that second ability, that's what makes this particular card really good, is the fact that a lot of these commanders, things like Jorah, things like Urza, they are frequently at the helm of artifact combo-based decks. So having a land that can also tutor out a combo piece whenever you need it comes in super handy because they would need like a stifle effect or a disallow effect to actually counter it. So this land, maybe not necessarily on this list because of all the life it gains, like I said, but it is a land that gains you life that also has a very powerful secondary use. But let's keep going. Let's go to some more here that really do gain you that life. Now the next land I want to look at here is Tomb of the Spirit Dragon from Khans of Tarkir. Tomb of the Spirit Dragon, you can tap it to add colorless to your mana pool, and it has an activated ability of 2 and tap it. Gain 1 life for each colorless creature you control. Now you might think that is a bit of a restriction, needing it to be a colorless creature to gain that life. But if you think about it, it's really not that bad. Artifact creatures tend to be colorless. Morphs are colorless. Manifests are colorless. Eldrazi are colorless, especially if they have the Devoid mechanic on it. So there's a lot of cool, maybe not in-your-face colorless creatures out there that can really take advantage of this. So as far as morph decks are concerned, you're probably playing something like Kadena, which has 3 colors in it. Slotting out a land slot just for something like this in a 3-color deck might run it a bit thin, but if you're playing something like the aforementioned Sai Master Thopterist, a 1-color commander that just pumps out colorless creature tokens, this just slots right in there and can represent so much life over the course of the game. Sai is not unheard of for him to have 10, 15, bajillion Thopters out there, and 1 activation of this can suddenly gain you all your life back and more. But that's not all. I mean, there are plenty of other cards within the 99 that this plays so nicely with. Saheeli, Sublime Artificer, that also pumps out those tokens for you. Mirrodin Besieged, once again, pumps out those tokens for you. Animation Module, Genesis Chamber, these are all artifacts that can produce more and more colorless creature tokens. Pretty much any deck that can pump out these tokens can take advantage of the life gain off this card. So you've been enjoying this video so far? Definitely make sure you hit that like button to show it, because we need to move on to what I call the big 3, the 3 brothers. Let's check them out. So who are these 3 brothers, and why do I group them together? Well, they are Diamond Valley, Mirror in the Moaning Well, and High Market. And the reason why I group them together is because Mirror in the Moaning Well and High Market are both essentially fixed versions of the original Diamond Valley, which at this point is on the reserve list and pretty much never going to see a reprint. So let's take a look at Diamond Valley, see why they had to make fixed versions of it. Diamond Valley is a land, obviously. The simply says, tap, sacrifice a creature. You gain life equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness. Now, some of your keen viewers out there may notice that this land, being the only land on this list up to this point, and to be honest, for the rest of it, that does not produce mana on its own. You need something like an Urborg to be able to tap this thing for mana. But it also represents a whole bunch of life depending on the creatures that you're sacking over the course of the game. I'll be honest with you though, this thing is not as popular as it is because of the life gain. This thing is as popular as it is because this is a free sacrifice outlet that has no color identity and can fit in any deck, where the upside of the sacrifice is actually pretty solid because it can represent a decent amount of life over the course of the game. Things that like death triggers or things that want to leave the battlefield at a certain point, I'm thinking things like Hazezon Tamar. He has a delayed enter the battlefield trigger that if you can get him off the battlefield before that trigger resolves, you get to keep your Sand Warrior tokens around. So this would be a great way to get rid of them. But things I don't want to get rid of are you guys. You're the kind of people I want to keep around, like little Sand Warriors. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below, because we now need to go over the 2 little brothers of Diamond Valley. Mirror in the Moaning Well and High Market. The good news, both of these, they can produce mana. They produce colorless mana, but they produce mana nonetheless, so you can still get some use out of them even if you don't have a creature to sack or have a reason to sack a creature. However, the way they go about sacking or handling the sacrifice is a little bit different. High Market, this one, is still free to activate. However, you only get 1 life. No matter how big the creature is or how small it is, you only get 1 life for sacrificing that creature. Mirren, on the other hand, has the same ability as Diamond Valley as far as gaining life equal to the toughness, but now you need to spend 3 mana to activate it. So why play either of these over Diamond Valley? Well, first, like I said, they still give you the option to tap for mana, which is nice, but I think more importantly here is that Diamond Valley is currently an $800 card. Being on the reserve list, being a good effect that can access multiple decks because it has no color identity, and being probably the best one at doing it, it is absurdly expensive. And suddenly, if you're looking for an effect like this in your deck, suddenly the $18 Mirren the Moaning Well or the $2 High Market looks a lot more tantalizing if you're trying to build your decks on a budget. Regardless, all 3 of these are excellent ways to gain life and excellent ways to be sacrifice outlets in your deck. And they, I think, are the best life gain lands out there, even if their best purpose isn't necessarily gaining life. So at this point, I want to hear from you folks. Like I said at the beginning, this was not a comprehensive list. This was just some of my favorite life gain lands. So if there were any that I did not mention, make sure you stick them in the comments down there below. Beyond that, thank you all for joining me today. I love hanging out with you, and I'll see you guys again in the future.